Hello and welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills. I am your host, Tia Young. Today we are going to talk about strategic planning with a process focus. Our special guest is an M.B.A. graduate from the University of Michigan and holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Economics from Stanford University. He has worked with Fortune 500 companies, helping them to apply quantitative analysis and to set up performance metrics to meet organizational goals. Our special guest is a managing principal of his organization, Greg Billings Management Consulting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Greg Billings to Skills to Pay the Bills. Hello, Greg. How are you today?
Great. How are you, Tia?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Good. So we're going to jump right in because we've got some great questions for you today.
Okay.
Now, I know what strategic planning is, at least I think I do.
Okay.
And the same thing with process focus.
Okay.
But marrying them together, I'm not sure I understand that. Can you talk to us about that?
Oh, the reason why that I describe myself as a consultant who focuses on that area is because a lot of people, when it comes to strategy is just basically good ideas. Mm-hmm. Good ideas to run your organization, run your business. However, when it comes time to having success, you need to make sure your processes are aligned with your strategies. So if you have an executive team and you come up with great strategies, but you have processes that don't implement your strategy, then ultimately you're not going to achieve your goals to your level of satisfaction. For instance, if you're a consumer products company and you're entering a new market, however, you haven't allocated enough money in terms of advertising or promotion and trade, whereas one of those factors may be the key in terms of your success in that market, then your chances of success are slim.
Right. That's headed towards probably failure of that small business.
Yes.
Some companies are having a hard time even trying to determine what they want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. What do you say about that?
Yeah, determining what you want to accomplish is difficult. I guess one thing you have to do is you have to look at what you're good at. Because in order for you to achieve success, you have to be good at it. I mean, the marketplace generally is very competitive. And in order to win, you're going to have to be competitive and you're going to have to be good at beating the competition. Mm-hmm. And so you have to decide what is it that we need to do as an organization to win in the marketplace.
Right. And do you find this to be a challenge with startup organizations? Because startups are kind of all over the place.
Right.
Have a great idea, or at least they think they do,
right.
And they've got tons of people telling them other things to do. And so at what point are you true to yourself?
Startups are generally, a lot of times they're tackling areas that it's unfamiliar territory. So in a sense, they have an advantage in terms of defining themselves a little easier than someone trying to enter an established market. In terms of coming up with your strategy, I guess at that point it really is determining what your product you're going to provide and whether or not there is a market for that product or service that you want to provide. And that's the key, getting data to determine whether or not that market is viable. Mm-hmm.
Well, is that something that you do to help small businesses, kind of help them define what it is that they really want to do and how to get there? Is that a part of your?
That's a big part of the strategic planning process. You have to have those conversations with the executive leadership team, make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of where they want to go. I mean, you have the executive leadership team, you also want to do a benchmark analysis. You want to determine what's going on out there in the marketplace in terms of is any other provider meeting the needs that we think is there. Mm-hmm. And if not, then we have to decide whether or not that need is strong and whether or not we have the resources to meet that need.
Right. You just said something. You talked about an executive leadership team.
Yes.
And there are a lot of small businesses, startups that are just beginning. That's a step that they leave out because they think they can't afford to have a team when they first start out. But
Right.
I'm thinking that if you don't have mentors or some type of team to work with you, it seems like you're headed for disaster. What do you say about that?
Yeah, many startups should seek mentorship, and there are groups out there that will provide kind of like a group mentorship situation. There are also fellow small businesses that are looking for guidance, and small businesses can get out there to find a group like that where there may be a mentor or two that will help them to achieve what they need to achieve. Also, there are also different cities have locations where they congregate the small businesses, and so you have a whole bunch of small businesses in one building, and so hopefully mentorship would be able to be developed in those type of scenarios.
What about SCORE? Have you ever had any dealings with SCORE, a resource, I think, of S.B.A.?
SCORE is a pretty valuable resource. I have not utilized them myself, but I've heard positive things about them. So I think they do.
And they're free. I mean,
and they're free, exactly.
That helps.
The price is right.
You and I talked a little bit about small businesses deciding what winning really means, but in terms of quantitative and qualitative. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain what you mean when you say quantitative versus qualitative?
Right. Winning in a qualitative sense would be customer satisfaction. Are my customers happy? Or the intended user of my service or product, are they satisfied? Are they are we happy with what we're delivering to them? So it's more kind of, it's more kind of, I guess, fuzzier. Whereas quantitative analysis is, what revenue target do we want to achieve in the next 3 months or in the next 6 months? What profit margin do we want to achieve within next 3 months or 6 months? So that's actually getting into the numbers and trying to set targets for numbers and then working to try to hit those numbers.
Do you say that it is best to find out these types of answers before you get into business, or just jump right into the business and kind of work your way, through the quantitative and qualitative part?
I think you have an idea about what you want to do, but I think it is good to do a little background research to analyze the marketplace, if there isn't a company that does exactly what you do, to try to find a company or an industry that has a comparable product or service, and look at the metrics from that sector to try to get a sense of some targets you want to establish.
Okay.
I recommend small businesses come up with a business plan. I know a lot of small businesses, they're stretched for resources, but I feel it's a very valuable exercise to establish a business plan, because a business plan is pretty useful in terms of helping to keep you on track.
Right. That business plan is going to change over time, maybe every several months or so.
Yes.
Would it change?
With conditions, business conditions change, so a lot of times business plans would need to change. In terms of metrics, though, there is when it comes to profit margin and revenue targets, you want to start out with numbers, and start with targets, and then if circumstances change, then you maybe adjust your targets, but you always want to keep your eye on whether or not you're making money, because at the end of the day, if you have a red bottom line, you won't be able to sustain that for a long period of time. And you may be able to sustain it for a couple of quarters or even a year or two, but then it becomes a money loser and you won't be able to pay your bills.
Well, what about small businesses that, they start out and they're using their own money.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're still working either a part-time job, and I've known some that are working full-time jobs and
Right.
trying to do the, develop the business.
Okay.
What do you say about that? Is that good to use your own money, your retirement funds? A lot of small businesses don't have, I guess, the maybe capacity, I don't know if that's
Right.
the right term or not, to get a bank loan because they're looking for the, 5 C's, that you'd have the credit, the capacity, and, all of that.
Right.
So what do you say about that? Because there are a lot of businesses that just jump right into it.
Yeah, it is. Ideally, you want to try to use other people's money to try to make profits. But if you can get that money, relatively cheaply, I mean, you don't want to be paying exorbitant interest rate, 20%, 30%, 40% interest rates.
40%. Are
Yeah,
there people that would charge 40%?
If you go to a lot of these money market stores
Yeah.
or on the corner in some of these, in some neighborhoods, I mean, they have usurious interest rates. So, but ideally, you want to try to finance your business with debt because you can write off the interest expense off your
taxes.
off your taxes.
Yeah.
So that's why it's better to finance your business with debt than with your own equity.
Okay, I see
which
what
is
you're
money
saying.
you put in.
Right.
So
right.
I would advise to try to finance it with debt, bank debt.
Bank debt.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked a little bit earlier about winning, and we talked about what it means quantitatively and qualitatively. And we may have to stop, for a short break. But
Okay.
if you could get into, in your opinion, what does it take to win? Because different people think different things about winning. Some people think
Right.
just the mere fact that I got my business license and that's a win for that point. But then other people think, well, it's making money. Other
Right.
people think it's service to your clients.
Right.
What do you think about that, winning?
I think winning, if you're making people happy, you're making your clients or whoever you're serving, if you're making them happy, then I think ultimately you will win. But I just use money as a guide in terms of whether or not you are being successful. So ideally, you want to deliver a service that provides added value to someone else.
Right.
You
That's
know,
right.
and so ultimately that's what I define as winning. But then you have to define what it takes to do that.
To win, to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a good point. We're going to take a short station break. We'll be right back. So don't touch that dial.
They say it takes a village. We focus on the truth about things that are happening in the DMV through the voices of the people who live, work, and play on Main Street. Tune in every week to discover how the community is coming together for the greater good of every resident.
Welcome back. You're watching Skills to Pay the Bills. I am Tia Young, your host, and our special guest today is Greg Billings of Greg Billings Management Consulting. Greg, right before the break, we were talking about winning, and I think I cut you off before you had a chance to finish. So
Okay.
What else would you add to what you said earlier about winning?
No, I've talked a lot about profits and the bottom line. Winning is not all about that, especially when you're a startup, because when you're a startup, you're also looking at other key metrics. You want to know how many people have heard of your service, or aware of your, your goods, whatever thing that you provide to the marketplace.
Okay.
And so, statistically, if you're advertising and you're seeing that you're advertising on YouTube, for instance, and you're seeing that your commercials are getting a lot of hits, maybe you're not making money right now, but over time that exposure to like your advertising may actually generate a profit. So these are the kind of like intermediate performance metrics that a business wants to look at in order to assess how healthy their business or organization is.
Okay, good. You're talking about advertising, and that's where I want to take us into
Okay.
next is marketing.
Okay.
For me, as a small business owner, that was just something that I had a hard time grabbing hold of. How important is it to involve yourself in some type of market research early on in business?
I really think it is really critical that you do the market research up front, because you want to get a sense of the size of the marketplace out there for you, what you have to offer. A lot of people, some people go out there and they hope that there is a market for whatever they're providing,
Right.
and then they set up shop and they invest in capital equipment and computers and other stuff. But if there isn't a market for that service, then they'll be disappointed. So I really encourage people up front to do market research to determine whether or not there truly is a market for the service and the competition isn't overwhelmingly
Right.
bitter or fierce. So.
Well, what about this technology piece? I know that's something else that I really fought really hard because I'm coming from the old school. It's basically sending out letters or knocking door to door, and
Right.
I really did. I mean, for the first couple of years in my business, I fought technology like everything, and then one day I just had to realize that I was going to have to join the kids and learn a little bit more about that. What do you say about technology and marketing?
Oh, I would definitely say most definitely incorporate technology into marketing. Text message marketing seems to be big. Like I mentioned earlier, advertising on YouTube. I think Google has made marketing a lot cheaper for people. Well, it's a lot cheaper for small businesses. You can set up AdWords campaigns and target how much money you want to spend per ad or per whatever times that your ad is shown. So.
What about LinkedIn? What do you think about it?
LinkedIn? LinkedIn is your professional face to the world, and I think it's a pretty affordable and very inexpensive way to advertise your business. So I would highly recommend that.
Okay, Facebook?
Facebook is more of a social platform, and I would say that with Facebook, I think you don't want to alienate audiences with your Facebook activities. I mean, you want to...
That could come to bite you later, right?
It could come to bite you because if you are known to be kind of anti-popular sentiment, then it could hurt you big time. And if people start a campaign against your organization. So I would say use Facebook carefully, but I'll try to use it in a positive sense.
Right, okay, I understand. So marketing is definitely very critical in
Yes.
the life of a business,
Yes.
small business. Okay, good. Now let's move. What is this about competitive analysis? What is competitive analysis and how is it done in a business?
Competitive analysis is taking a look at what your organization wants to provide, product or service, and then seeing how many other entities out there are providing that product or service. So, and you want to get a sense of, well, how much are those other entities spending to provide, that, product or service? How much are they spending to advertise that product or service? So you want to get a sense of how much will it take for you to compete from an advertising perspective to win. Because generally, if advertising is one of the main communication channels for selling your product, good or service, then you're going to have to be sizably different than your competitors if you want to win. So either if you're going to target the same market as your competitors, you maybe spend 25% more than the highest competitor in that market, or maybe go to different segments, target different segments. So that way your advertising expenditure isn't as much.
Right. Now we talked a lot about research.
Yes.
I'm a small business owner. I'm excited about my product or service. I don't know where to do this research. I don't have the time, at least I don't think I have the time to do this research.
Right.
Can you get help? Where do you get help? Or if you do it yourself, where do you go?
There is a big move afoot nowadays towards big data and for governments to provide data publicly and different public agencies to provide data publicly. So many of these agencies are providing data, over the web. And so if you hire a talented individual who's good with, say, Python or R language, you can have them do data mining in order to, pull up a report that you want. But they'll scrape, their tools will scrape the internet and get the data that you need and format it so that it's executive friendly.
Oh, okay.
But you can either hire a consultant to do that, or you can maybe go to a university, local business school, because some schools have real world, education, curriculum-based classrooms.
Okay.
And so they want their students to get a real world experience. And so they will offer student services for very inexpensive rates or virtually free. So
well, can you do one without the other? Can you do the market research without the comparative analysis, or do they go hand in hand? How does that work?
I would say if you're doing market research, you want to know what the competition is out there. So I would say,
it's hand in hand.
Yes,
Yeah,
I would say you have to know what your competitors are doing.
Okay, you've also talked a little bit today about tracking progress. How do you track progress? Or do you have to go to a professional to have them do that, or how can a business owner do that themselves?
Business owners can track progress by basically with an Microsoft Excel work tool, and actually Google has spreadsheets as well, but you can set up spreadsheets and use these spreadsheets to report on your metrics. So, I mean, a lot of small businesses use QuickBooks, and so you can take the data from QuickBooks, and then you can create reports to show how your receivable ratios compare to your sales, as well as your account payables, how those compare to your sales. So if you have large receivables compared to your sales and that number is growing, then that means you're going to have a cash flow problem. And so,
that's interesting that you're saying that, again, we go back to technology. There's technology out there that can make it easier for you, so you're not like the guy with the armband and the great big book, late at night writing everything in. So you have things that can pull the data together for you.
Yes,
okay,
yes. You can set up macros to pull the data to create the reports that you need. Software is becoming more sophisticated nowadays that
that's true.
They are, you just pretty much tell it you want this kind of report and they'll just show it. So, but those tend to be more expensive packages, but you can do it with a simple Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, I'm going to try to get these two more questions in.
Okay.
In your opinion, why do small businesses fail within the first, say, 5 to 7 years, and maybe some of them even within 3 years? We got about 2 minutes.
In my opinion, I think it's because there was a failure to do a business plan, and to follow the metrics, to see how they're doing over time. Because like I said, it's fine to start your business, but you want to measure how you're doing, and you want to track that monthly, and quarterly, so just to get a sense of where the trends are. What's your profit margin doing? What about your customer base? You growing your customers? What about your advertising? Are you getting the hits that you want from the ads you're running on YouTube or whatever? So I think small businesses, it's probably the number one reason why they fail is because they fail to plan.
They fail to plan, and that's it. Well, our time is just about up, and we hope that you have enjoyed our show today with special guest Greg Billings. If you have comments or questions of Greg, just give him a call, and I know that he will be delighted to answer your questions. Tune in next week for another great show. Bye-bye.